Please get ready for a dictation of a matter on Government of India Act 1858 taken from website gktoday.in. 5 seconds. Start. The Government of India Act 1858 marked the beginning of new chapter in the constitutional history of India. The act, known as the Act for the Good Government of India, provided for liquidation of East India Company and transferred the powers of government, territories and revenues to the British Crown. The growing resentment in England against the company rule reached its climax with the Mutiny of 1857. The mutiny was suppressed, but it sent ripples of fear to London and convinced the British that administration of the India must be taken over by the Crown. The British Prime Minister introduced a bill in 1858 in the Parliament for the transfer of Government of India to the Crown. However, before this bill was to be passed, he was forced to resign on another issue. Later, Lord Stanley introduced another bill which was originally titled as an Act for the Better Government of India, and it was passed on August 2, 1858. It is called Government of India Act 1858 or 1858 Act. On September 1, 1858, the Court of Directors of East India Company held its last solemn assembly, and the East India Company issued its last instructions to the servants in the East and offered to its sovereign an empire in these words: "Let Her Majesty appreciate the gift, let her the vast country and teeming millions of India under her direct control, but let her not forget the great corporation from which she has received them, nor the lessons to be learnt from its success." Government of India Act 1858 provided that India was to be governed directly and in the name of the Crown. This act abolished the company rule, abolished the court of directors, and abolished the board of control. This act abolished the dual government introduced by the Pitt's India Act. The principle of doctrine of lapse was withdrawn. Liberty was given to Indian rulers subject to British suzerainty, and it also opened some door for Indians in government services. The act provided the Crown will govern India directly through a Secretary of State for India, who was to exercise the powers which were being enjoyed by the Court of Directors and Board of Control. The office of Secretary of State was vested with complete authority and control over Indian administration. Thus, he was now the political head of the India. He was also a member of the British Cabinet and was responsible ultimately to the British Parliament. Lord Stanley was made first Secretary of State for India. He had been earlier the President of the Board of Control. The Government of India Act 1858 provided for Council of India of the Secretary of the State. It was to be consisted of 15 members, 7 of them were to be elected by the Court of Directors, and the rest of 8 members were to be appointed by the Crown. More than half the members must have lived in India for 10 years and must not have left the country more than 10 years before the date of appointment. Each member was to be paid pound 1200 a year out of Indian revenues. Secretary of State of India was empowered to preside at the meetings of the Indian Council. He was to have a vote and also a casting of vote in case of a tie. He was also empowered to send and receive secret messages and dispatches from Governor General and was not bound to communicate these to the Indian Council. The Government of India Act established the control of British Parliament over Indian affairs. The members of Parliament could ask questions from Secretary of State for India regarding Indian administration. The right of appointment to important offices in India was also vested either in the Crown or in the Secretary of State of India in Council. The administration of the country was now highly centralized. There was a provision of creation of an Indian civil service under the control of the Secretary of State. Stop.